Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Such great conversation happening, and I see you turn around so quickly. But anyway, welcome. My name is Wanda Stride, so I welcome you on behalf of the congregation at Trinity St. Andrews. But I'm also welcoming you on behalf of the Hugs in Brighton committee that's helping Ukrainians get settled in Brighton. And I sit on the executive for Hugs. It's a great honor. And we were looking at the lists today, and there's about 40 volunteers so far. And it's still not enough. So I'm glad that you're here tonight. Thank you for joining us on Zoom, those of you who have joined us on Zoom. And we're here to learn a lot about what kind of work it is we're doing, but we're also here to learn about what has happened over in Europe and what some people are doing to try to alleviate the suffering. And I'm looking forward to a very inspiring evening, I have to tell you. We have 4 powerhouse women here tonight who are going to be speaking to us about their experiences. So before I get ahead of myself, I want to introduce our first 2 speakers. And this is Dr. Maria Marszal and Yvonne Kay, who have come to, you both live in Coburg? Okay. Grafton and Coburg, oh, even closer, okay. And they both, I'm just going to introduce them both at the same time, and they're going to speak separately, and then you'll have a chance to ask some questions. And so if they say something that you wonder about, make a note of it, and we can have a more informal conversation afterwards. But Dr. Maria Marszal grew up in Warsaw, Poland, and she finished medical school in Poland, but she came to Ontario after getting married to a Polish Canadian. And she did her residency in Sudbury, her family medicine residency, through the University of Ottawa. And then in 2004 came to Coburg. And we're very glad you did. And since then has dedicated herself to family medicine, but also to helping others. She's made many trips to Honduras and short medical trips, medical mission type trips to help people. And she's done some work with the Backdoor Mission in Oshawa. Some of you may know about that initiative. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear about her latest venture overseas. She's obviously done very many of them. But you went in April, is that correct, to Poland. And you went in March? Middle of March. Okay, and then you went in the middle of April, is that how that worked? Beginning of May. Mother's Day, okay. So they didn't go on the same trip, but there was a lot of crossover in the work that you did. So we'll hear from Dr. Maria first, but I also want to introduce Yvonne Kay. And Yvonne Kay was also born in Warsaw, Poland, and she moved to Toronto in 1983 following the Solidarity movement. And that, I don't know if you remember, back in the 80s, martial law descending on Poland, and it was a time of hope for many people. And this is when Yvonne and her family came, and I think you said you were in your mid-20s at that point. Yes, and spent her career as a cardiac technologist. Yes, and also sat on the board of the Northumberland YMCA, and in that capacity did exchanges with the YMCA in Nicaragua. So, and again, these are 2 women who are used to reaching out and helping across borders. And so tonight we're going to hear that when the war broke out in Ukraine, and Yvonne said when she saw the people fleeing, and she knew that Dr. Maria was delivering some financial and medical help to Ukrainian refugees. So she decided to do the same thing. And I was listening to them talk beforehand, and when it was getting really close to the time to leave, and Dr. Maria was getting overwhelmed, and Yvonne was the one who reached out and got the press involved, and then the rest of us knew about what they were doing because of that. So there's been a lot of really generous people who have helped you along the way, but you are the ones who went. So we're really excited to hear your stories this evening. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Wanda, for your kind introduction. Thank you for invitation. I'm very happy to be here in this very generous community. My presentation was made originally for Grafton Catholic Church because they raised a lot of money for my trip, but and I wanted to make this presentation to thank them and show them where the money went. But it's not only Grafton Church. People were very generous in Coburg, Grafton area, and especially Brighton. Quite frankly, I wouldn't be able to do this work if it was not the Brighton community and Doug LeBlanc and his people. This is a little bit of information from February, March. Approximately 10 million people had to fled their homes in Ukraine, and half of them escaped to neighboring countries. And Poland accepted about 2.5 million refugees, mainly children and mothers, because fathers had to stay behind, they were to fight. And the city of Warsaw, where I went, has population of 2 million, and they accepted about 400,000 refugees. So my goal for the trip was to bring medical supplies and money, and I was able to bring, to collect about $16,000. I think it's even more in retrospect, and 250 pounds of medical supplies and medications. So how did I did it? Mind you, we booked our trip in February, and 2 days later the war broke. And our flight was March 19th, so we had about 3 weeks to organize the money and the medications. So what I did, it was 5 o'clock in my office. I called Doug LeBlanc, asked him if he's busy. And I asked him, he was not busy, I asked him if he can come, and he was in my office half an hour later. And I started explaining, my mission, and he just sat there, and he was not even taking notes or anything, and he said, just tell me what you need. And I told him, I need money, I need medications, simple over-the-counter medications. Because of the sheer volume of the people that came, there was a need for Tylenol, Advil, creams for babies, and things like that. And so he just said, tell me what I need, I told him, and he delivered. He delivered it to my home. So next slide, please. Hello. This is me at Warsaw Airport. As you can see, all the medications with medical supplies and stuff. So I know what you're thinking, that the duty officer was not impressed. When he asked, what do we have? We said medications, and he said, but you are not allowed to bring medications. And then he asked next question, and how much money do you bring? And then he paused, and he said, I actually don't want to know, and he let us know. So those, yeah, and next slide. And actually, I have even more stuff. This is what I brought with me. I have to pay for extra luggage, but there was more stuff that I couldn't take, and that went with somebody else who went to Poland afterwards. And some of that I dropped at the backdoor mission in United Church in Oshawa. Some stuff that was too heavy, not practical. This is the stadium in Warsaw, which was turned into reception center, and as you can see, a lot of, especially women, and this is where refugees receive their social insurance number, gives them access to healthcare, access to school, and temporary work. And next slide, please. So, as I said, the presentation was to kind of explain where the money go, and the first 2,000 went to the Catholic Church in Warsaw towards their Ukrainian community. It's more Ukrainian center, which is basically a group of refugees that kind of stay in the parish, and they were also sending stuff, supplies. So we gave them the one suitcase of medications to take with them. Mind you, and if nothing can go straight to Ukraine, every donation, all the medications have to go through Poland. And next slide, please. And this is my next stop. I talked to this clinic, Doctors of Hope in Warsaw, before my trip. They look after homeless people in Warsaw, and I knew that they would be the first people to see those refugees because they don't have usually the health card, and I was right, and they provided me with list what's really needed, and yes, and the next slide. So this is the doctor and the nurse from the clinic, and there are about 30 volunteers and doctors who work there, and they received 8,000 towards the operation of the clinic, and also I gave them most of the medications and medical supplies. Next slide, please. So this is us. You have to give me credit for bringing those Canadian flags. I had 3 weeks. And this is my husband in a blue. So as you can see, very modest facility, but very dedicated, great staff. And next slide. Medication, you can see that this stuff is expensive, even in Canada, you have to admit. I think it's in Europe probably also quite expensive. And it went to, I can tell you, everything went to use immediately. And next slide. Yeah, more medications. And next slide. So then the medications are packed into smaller packages from this big Costco size containers. And next slide. Yeah, next slide. This is what I learned in Honduras. And this is the homeless clinic opened, so to speak, the satellite clinic, satellite office in one of the reception center, and I was lucky to be able to visit. This is, I think, day one of the operation. You see the nurse and the doctor and 2 other doctors. And this reception center also has capacity to house temporarily 300 refugees. And next slide. And these are the pictures I took in this reception center. So processing of those refugees is difficult, obviously, because of lack of documentation, different language, the sheer number. People are often traumatized. People with chronic condition. There are issues with low vaccination rates for things like measles, mumps, rubella in children. People are not vaccinated for COVID. I heard about cases of TB, HIV. We know that some of the children from hospitals were transferred to Poland for treatment. And next slide, please. And also the refugees have access to clothing and other things they need, because very often they left kind of without anything. And next slide. So I also contacted my friends from my medical school, especially Romek is one of the people who they've already been involved with helping refugees, which is quite amazing because we are talking early March. And because of the sheer volume of people, the help rested on citizens, and they were able to organize themselves in very efficient groups and networks to help people out. They were doing it, they were paying for all those expenses, so I thought I gave them 6,000 as a to kind of give them a little bit of extra financial help. And next slide, please. So these are the pictures from Romek, because mind you, the situation is very fluid, it changes. At the beginning, they were working with transport, moving patients from the border to different cities. But also they were organizing shelters, either temporary or for longer time, provided food for reception centers. And I think a big part of their activities was buying supplies and transfer those medical supplies to Ukraine. And next slide. And again, some other slides, other pictures from Romek, one from the house that sheltered the Ukrainian family. And the next slide. And this is Tanya. I met Tanya, 15-year-old athlete. She ran away from Ukraine with her mom, and she was involved with volleyball. So some of the money went to support her to pay for her training. So she goes 3 times a week for the volleyball, and she stays with her mom, with Romek's mother-in-law. So this is where I leave you. And Yvonne went to Poland a few weeks afterwards, and she will tell you more about working at the reception centers. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to take them afterwards. Thank you very much.
Hello, so I'm Yvonne, and as you know, I'm also a friend of Maria, Dr. Maria. And as soon as I knew that she was making plans for her trip, it didn't take me long to decide that I wanted to go as well. And the nice thing happened is that I kind of followed up. So when Dr. Maria came back, I had a chance to regroup with our friends abroad that we both have in Warsaw. They were able to keep us always informed of what is really needed. And the situation was changing so quickly as the 3 million people arrived in the country, and they were being taken into different cities and countrysides. I'm from Warsaw, that's where I went, but I also knew that that was a huge number of refugees that was stationed there. And if I may have a slide, please. I was told by very good friends of mine who volunteer in so many organizations in Warsaw to go to this particular spot where wouldn't you know it, a pandemic has created a space in a huge office building. So naturally the next, we okay there? Okay. And naturally, the next step was to place people wherever we could, wherever they could. So I was told about this very new, just open center, and I met this fabulous young fellow, Lucas, who was hosting 300 people in the office tower. Next, please. Young people, oh my goodness, there were tons of teenagers, kids, women, a few elderly people, but a lot of people with very traumatic experiences, because these particular refugees were one of the last ones to arrive in a huge volume. Beautiful, happy people. First thing we did, we sat down and we talked about what's really needed. Next, please. They took me around to show me the very simple playground for the kids. We continue. Their sleeping arrangements, extremely basic. 3 families, with children and youth sleeping on cots like that. One wonderful thing was that there were tons of youth volunteers that were helping with kids, keeping them entertained and happy and healthy, which was a really big thing. A lot of people came with pets. Never thought about that. They were in need of pet food and veterinary help. And as you see, those sleeping arrangements were quite narrow. So first thing we did, I took a huge volume of the funding that I had, and we just bought tons of food supply that they could literally last for a month at least. So pretty basic transportation, but it worked. Whatever we could not order online, we were purchasing ourselves. Basic kitchens, but functional. And what I really liked about it is that they were so clean. Everybody had their space, their shelves, their place in the fridge. Everything was numbered or named, and everybody worked very well together. Medical supply, and that's a huge issue. This was just a basic first aid kit cabinet, if you will. But what was really needed was actually serious medications, particularly for people with trauma, mental traumas. So they needed a safe place to lock it up and keep it safe. So that was another purchase we did, but I'm not showing a picture of that for safety reasons. Very basic toys and supplies for the kids to play with. We just kind of packed everything into those rooms. Met fabulous women, majority women. Of course, the majority of refugees were women with children. And the pets, usually just a lovely, lovely conversations. More food was a big thing. Go ahead. More supplies of food, a lot of buckwheat and flour and anything we could get. And women love to bake. Am I right? Ukrainian ladies love to bake, so that was a big thing. Yeah. And then children and families. So they would group together, travel in packs, which is always safe, and I would meet a bunch of these families in the subway in Warsaw, and they would go from place to place to visit other Ukrainian families. And of course, church groups were organizing a lot of these trips, but they would literally, I was asked every day how to get from place to place. So with my English, my Polish, and my very broken Ukrainian, we tried to get them with the phones directed to the right places, but they were great. The government has given them free passes for the subway systems, so that really helped a lot. I went back, I dragged my friend from Warsaw who came from New York City, and I said, you gotta see this place, you gotta help me out. And sure enough, she did, and we got some more financial help there. We decided to have a healthy, kind of a fun day for the kids, so we brought tons of fruit and vegetables, and some pancakes, because kids like pancakes. And these beautiful girls, the kids were just fantastic, happy, loving, and just broke my heart to leave them behind. Go ahead. Oh, this lovely teenager, she had these hamsters since day one, so she left with that little pet. She traveled with this little hamster from Ukraine all the way to Warsaw. I don't know how many weeks it took her. She was so proud of that little, it was emotional. So next what we did is I linked up with my childhood friends who are living in different parts of Warsaw, and they informed me about all these amazing groups that opened warehouses specifically for refugees. And so as we keep saying, weekly things were changing. This week they needed, that particular weather improved, so they needed socks and sandals for the kids. So that was a big action to go and purchase all that. Go ahead. And so there's my friend with her granddaughter. And what I loved about this picture is this young girl has taken volunteerism as her next big thing in life. So I often think about the youth and children that are impacted by this whole conflict. One nice thing about it is that some of the younger generation now that is working they are working as volunteers, they are growing up with a great sense of global community. Go ahead. And this was a lovely young little Ukrainian girl who just had a little baby brother born as well, so very proud little girl. And of course, kids again. We finally got to the point where we're able to organize books for the kids in Ukrainian, because that's tough. You needed teachers. doctors, anybody who could communicate with that volume of Ukrainian people. We don't really, we have similar language, but our alphabet is different, and we try to communicate pretty much with hands. But the kids are the best because they communicate with smiles. Go ahead. And again, more fun for the kids, just so a lot of them are so traumatized that the volunteers are trying to help them forget and move on, which is hard to do, but they're definitely doing a good job. I stayed there till the end of May, and then Mother's Day in Europe is a bit later. It's on the 26th of May. So these women were very emotional. They received extra gifts from Mother's Day that we organized. Another example of on outskirts of Warsaw, where there's a huge warehouse where one of my friends helps organize. This is the lineup. So obviously it was a needed place. And that's the place that's gathering most of the, on a weekly basis, things that are needed, as you see, basic baby stuff, supplies. And I had a privilege of, I love to run. My fellow runner is here, a colleague. And I, on May 1st, was able to do a Toronto half marathon, and I met this amazing Ukrainian team of young people. And we had amazing chat, and we ran together, and I think they really inspired me. Needless to say. Go ahead. This is a very short video that I was able to obtain as the people are saying thank you in Ukrainian. Maybe you can hear and help us translate.
Дякуємо за ваші дари. Дякуємо, Україна дякує, бо весь час саме більше допомагає Польща. Направду, з цілого світу
Слава Україні!
саме більше допомагає. Слава Україні! І поляк.
Did you hear any of that? Did you understand? Okay, good. Can you help us translate it? A little bit. That's okay. I don't think it is bad, but okay, another time. Thank you. And so just to add to follow what the story from Maria, I met Maria's friend Roman, who is in a very secret way doing a lot of important work, transporting people and, sorry, you can hear me? Thank you. So, it's good now? I apologize. I'm not used to speaking to microphone. So I met Maria's friend and follow up with him, and he's been doing amazing work in transporting people, would you believe, people that needed to be taken from point A to B to different country. And that was extreme, that's very important, because not everybody can find a place to live in the cities in Poland, and they might have families in Germany and other places, so they could move it around. He also told me, just recently, I got an email from him actually this morning, that they're moving their supplies now all the way to the conflict zone, which is very much east of Ukraine. And so we cannot show you any pictures from the meeting with him. We don't want to show any faces because these guys are doing incredible work of just transporting goods where they need to go. Great trip. I'm going back in the fall, I hope. So if there's anything that I can do, help with, or if you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
So I'm wondering if I could ask someone else to do the Q&A, run around with the microphone and offer. Would you be able to do that? Oh, thank you so much. So if anybody has any questions, doesn't matter for whom, we can get them answered.
I would think that anybody who's been through that situation would be traumatized in a big way. How are they able to settle in a country that is foreign to them? It, I try to imagine myself or my family, and I don't think we would function well at all. Just so dramatic, the change, and to have to leave your husband, your brother, your father, whoever behind, constant worry and probably not able to be in contact with them at all.
So I'll take this one. So of course, very good point. A lot of trauma. I heard the mayor of Warsaw said all the psychologists in town are involved with helping, giving some psychological help. I also know, I myself contacted a Ukrainian psychologist in Toronto and asked them in particular, I'll step back. I was on Facebook, which I usually don't do a lot before my trip, and I was talking to different people in Poland, and somebody asked on Facebook, do you know anybody who speaks Ukrainian who can help with kids who are very traumatized? I contacted Ukrainian psychological center in Toronto, and they were kind enough to offer some help via internet. But that doesn't answer the question. I know that Polish people were really generous, that they offered free phones for people who came from Ukraine so they can talk to people in Ukraine. But I cannot imagine what they go through. But we definitely know a lot of people suffer a lot of trauma. Some people do much better, they can adjust, some not so well. But I think they are very resilient people. They've been through a lot, and they are tough people, and they just go. And I've heard a lot of people are able to find jobs. They are trying really hard, even doing things like pierogis for sale or things like that. So I give them credit. Thank you.
Another question?
Oh, there's Doug. Doug LeBlanc.
How many families are currently in the Brighton area? I'm talking women, children that are here in the Brighton area.
In Warsaw?
No, in that have come from Ukraine and are living in the Brighton area now.
Oh, I would have to. Yes, the next two speakers will know.
Okay.
Because I don't know.
Thank you, Maria. One thing that the audience probably doesn't know is how much your husband, Mitch, how he cared and how he helped. I walked in there with more medicines, and she wanted medicines for newborn to 12-year-olds, and that was the thing for orphanages and for people that were coming out with their parents. And everybody was generous that I went to, the pharmacies, the people that had it. And to get the suitcases, they took the best medicine, and her husband, I think he set up a weight scale to weigh everything to make sure he was within the ounce what he could take on a plane.
Yes.
And what amazing me. But you should actually talk about him and how he helped them to get everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Actually, you reminded me, Doug not only organized all those medications, he gave me a really nice cash. And also, I forgot to mention, I had this idea I might take some tourniquets, which are simple medical equipment to kind of stop bleeding. And I contacted the company. I thought it would be easy just to buy. I contacted the doctor who has 3D company that makes tourniquets. But it turned out to be more complicated than just calling and ordering. So again, thank you, Doug, because you talked to him, and all I know, they were all on the plane to Poland. Thank you.
Any other questions?
My name is Jack Hellberg, and I don't have much of a question as I like to have an observation. I came from Germany when it was bombed out, and I see the pictures from Ukraine, and my childhood was like that. And I came to Canada when I was only 17 years old, and the first 2 years was awfully lonely. I didn't speak the language. And going around from the apartment we had, or I had, walking around, and I had to memorize the words of the street name, which was totally strange to me. And I walked around trying to memorize it, and I wouldn't dare to go any further than that block around until I had those. The loneliness in that during the first 2 years was awesome. I cried a lot. But there was one family, Canadian family, who was there to support us, who called us for dinner, had a social get-together, took us up to Muskoka to see the countryside. We weren't living with them, but they were available to take a phone call, to question. If I had a confusion as what's happening, they would try to answer it for me. That kind of sponsorship is so important, and if you cannot take the family into your home, you could sponsor a family to overcome the loneliness they will be experiencing. This country has been great to me, gave me plenty of opportunity, and even so I didn't lose my accent, I still be about Canadian. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great point. Thank you for this.
Thank you. You're getting your exercise tonight. What is the greatest need for Hugs and for the work that they're doing or trying to do currently?
In Poland, in Warsaw?
Hugs.
Or you mean in Hugs?
Either here or overseas.
For Hugs questions, we'll leave it maybe to the other speakers and to Wanda. With Poland, I think it changes because the situation changes. I would say they really need money to kind of continue, but we are in touch with them. We try to monitor. Yvonne will go in a few months. But the easy answer is money in Poland. Because mind you, I have to emphasize and say it again, it's really felt on citizens, and I give them credit. They took those Ukrainian refugees under their own roof, and there's not a lot of support from government. Yes, there is some, but people were amazing. And I think part of it is we remember how things went during the Second War, how we were left behind. Another thing is we are very close, Polish-Ukrainian. My grandparents were born in Lviv area, although they are Polish, but it used to be Poland, part of Poland. A lot of Ukrainians came to Poland prior to the war to work. I think they, so, what was this? I lost track.
There was a huge influx of people working in the hospitality business already from Ukraine. A lot of young people were coming over the last 3 years, so that helped a lot too. But I agree with Maria that the need is financial only because how you keep sustaining people that can't really work yet. A lot of women have young children, they cannot go to work. So to keep those centers going is, and the warehouses where only Ukrainian registered refugees can go and help themselves to what they would need. I think that's the key from my point of view, because the government is pretty much done anything they can, and they are not doing more.
Sure. Well, I know that on behalf of Canadians, our federal government has made various announcements, but it seems to be primarily providing military aid. Are they in the process, or have they provided any humanitarian aid, such as the funding that you're talking about, or other supplies, or are they just focused on the military situation, and the people are left to their to do the best they can with very little?
Right. I'll be honest with you, if I may say this. I was very disappointed when I left Poland that the governments, the Western governments, were not doing enough. Mind you, we might not know about what's being done. A lot of things are done very quietly, I noticed. But on a day-to-day businesses of seeing what was going on, I was really concerned, where is this going? And I also met a number of Ukrainian people that were trying to go back to the western part of Ukraine just recently, only because that was the safest zone to go back to. But what do they have to go back to? They have nothing left there.
Sure.
So how do we help them? We have to help them financially sustain their lives for a little bit longer so they can stand on their feet and start to rebuild. But I don't know of any government institution or organization that's doing that. And I would like to also point the Lions Club, wonderful volunteers that I have actually met in Warsaw as well. So I want to talk to you guys.
I know that in the Canadian financial system, it's relatively easy, if you have the means, to transfer money from one place to another. If we're going down to the States or overseas for traveling, vacation, whatever, we have access to funds. What sort of banking system is there in Ukraine and Poland, and do the refugees have an ability to get whatever financial resources they might have had in Ukraine out, or is that all not possible in the chaos that exists?
I cannot say about Ukraine, but I would say in Poland it's like any other European country. You have easy access to the banking and transfer of money. I know I send money sometimes to my parents. It's like not a big problem. Or
It's a very westernized way.
it's a very westernized
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
If memory serves, I believe at the beginning of this, the government did offer to, well, it did. It was saying any money you gave to the Red Cross, now I can only assume that wasn't military driven, that they would match. Now, I don't know how long that lasted. I don't know what that culminated in, but I do know that that program was in existence. Whatever that, what that ended up being, I don't really know. But, yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I remember the Red Cross. No, it's okay. I remember the Red Cross doing a matching, but I'm just wondering if you can recommend, would you recommend we donate to the Red Cross if we want to help the effort financially in Poland or other countries? Is there a group that you recommend?
If you want my honest opinion, I have 100%, I'm 100% confident with my friend who helps, who organized who organized help right from day one. And if you ask me, I would send all the money to him or maybe to the homeless clinic, because actually I have the thank you letter from them as well. I am a little bit, let's put it that way, I'm very realistic, and with money, if you give me money, I made extreme effort, 100% of it needs to go to the do the people. I cannot speak about Red Cross, but I'm always a little bit weary about I'm not saying anything about the Red Cross, but there's always a concern about transparency, administration fees and things like that. But having said all that, maybe that's a good way to go. I know in the past there were a lot of, in Poland they were doing a lot of fundraising, were collecting money. My cousin said recently Polish people now are collecting money to buy a Turkish drone, huge drone. It costs 25 million, and they've already raised 5 million. So this is just to kind of let you know how generous people are. I thought this was really cute.
There is a list of organizations that actually are registered in Poland that do that work, that help with Ukrainian refugees. So if anybody needs a link, we can provide it.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
we can link those on the Hugs
Okay.
soon-to-be website, but Facebook group for now.
Fantastic.
Okay, yes? Yeah, we're actually, if you hold that thought, we're about to hear from two hosts. Okay. I haven't, and I will remind you afterwards that you had that question. Are there any other questions for Yvonne and Dr. Maria? Oh, we've got a couple here. Neil. No, hang on.
Thanks. I'm just wondering if Doctors Without Borders or Médecins Sans Frontières are active over there now.
As far as I know, they were not allowed in Ukraine because of the security issues. So maybe it's changed, but as far as I know, they are not. And they are not shy to go to dangerous areas.
Thank you. All right, I think there was one more question over here. Okay. And then I think we're not gonna call it a night because we have two more speakers to hear from who are anxiously waiting.
Thank you. On the talking of funds, like when I was helping Dr. Maria with this, there was also another doctor from Ukraine that had a business in Toronto, Savlana, I hope I got it right. And she would arrange all the shipping to Poland from there, and they would organize all the shipping. So most of the other business people that were with me, I would make sure the funds would go to her, and she would give a receipt. And everything that was shipped that we bought in war surplus and everything, because her friend gave us a list of what was going, so we went to a lot of the war surplus place and bought what they needed. They needed shoes and boots and camouflage clothes because all they had was their civilian clothes, so they couldn't really hide. So that was also all sent through there. And I think we're meeting her tomorrow, Saturday night, which is good. But that's another way of the funds, and then the funds go directly to the people. They're not used like for administration.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you both very much, and please don't go far. So while they're finding their seats, I'm going to ask May and Stacey to come up and take their seats. And I mentioned earlier we have almost 40 volunteers. So while they're taking their seats, I'll just say a little bit about what Hugs is doing. We're not actually hosting, as a group, we are not hosting Ukrainians. We are supporting people who generously open their own homes to people who are fleeing the war. And so we'll help you navigate the system to figure out how to reach people. We'll help you with any support that you need. So we have people who are volunteering to drive once a week. And we also have people who just seem to have a full-time job writing up charitable status. We're trying to get charitable status and legal documents. And it's, so there's a whole vast, whatever your skills are, I can guarantee you we have a place for you if you would like to volunteer with Hugs. But we have Stacey and May here to talk about these. Stacey and May have opened their homes, and they have families living with them now. And Stacey actually, Stacey's family did that before Hugs was even existed. We had our first meeting on March 31st, and you already had been in touch with Costa, and yeah. So, and then May, some of you may know, has always, I think, I knew your name before I met you, was being involved in refugee work. And so May and her husband have opened their home as well. So I'm going to invite you both now. I don't know if you decided who was going first, but just to talk a little bit about what it's like, and then we'll take questions afterwards, including how many families we have in Brighton.
So I'll start because I'm nervous. So I'm just...
You're nervous. Oh, don't be nervous.
There's a lot of people here.
Nah. Yeah, right by your face, because I noticed a few people were having trouble hearing, I think, right?
That's
Make
all
sure
right.
we speak into the mics.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Okay, perfect. So when the war broke out, my husband's family is from the Ukraine. His grandmother came when she was 16 years old, and his grandfather came when he was 19 years old. And so it was really important to my husband and his mom, and so we started to talk about what we could do to help. And we didn't really have a lot of extra finances to be sending money, but we decided to open our home, and so that's what we did. And so the way we started to do that is we registered with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress website to say that we were ready to host, and that we could accept a family. And we had talked, and we really wanted children to be able to come into our home. Our daughter is growing and gone, and so it just seemed to be a good match for us. So we registered, and we said we could host up to 6 people within our home. And it was taking a long time through that site. They were doing checks on both the hosts and the Ukrainian people that were trying to come. And so we decided to look at other ways of getting connected. And so on social media, there were so many people desperately looking for places to come to. And so we registered on another website called icanhelphost.org. And that's where we ended up meeting the family that we have staying with us. So on that website, we listed everything that we had available and what we were willing to do. And we had a couple of other families before this one, before the family that came, get in contact with us. And for various reasons, they just weren't a good match. And so when we met, when Alina and I started talking, so that's the mom that's staying with us. And it is a family of 5, so it's mom, dad, 3 children, 11-year-old boy, 6-year-old boy, and 4-year-old daughter. They're wonderful. And so once we started getting connected, we were using WhatsApp in order to communicate back and forth. For us, that seemed like the safest way to be chatting with people. And so we just started talking. And 2 days later, we decided to do a video chat. And during that video chat, my husband and I, asked questions. They asked questions of us. We took them on a tour of our home because we were going to be sharing our home. So we let them, see the bedroom that mom and dad were going to use. At the time, the room that we knew we were going to set up for the children was actually my office. So we were like, it looks like an office now, but it won't if you come, that kind of thing. And, the washroom that they would be using. And then we showed them the upstairs, the area that we were going to be sharing. And, and we just started, we probably talked that day for about 2 hours on video chat. And then we continued to communicate. During that video chat, we decided it was a go for us and it was a go for them. And so from that moment on, we just started making plans. The first date that we had set was 2 weeks after that conversation. So that conversation was March 21st, and we were expecting them to come 2 weeks later. But their passports hadn't arrived with their visas stamped in it. And it ended up that they came May 7th. So it was quite a while in between the time that we had agreed and the time that they actually arrived. And it gave us a lot of time to get to know each other. And by the time they actually arrived, we felt like we knew everything about each other. We talked about, our personal interests. We talked about, so I'm going to my notes again. We talked about the fact that they were in Kyiv, so a big city, and they were coming to a small community. So we sent them the website, the Brighton municipality website, so that they could read up on it. And they were impressed with the fact that we lived so close to the lake. And that was a big draw. And they wanted to be outside of a city. They weren't interested in being in a city they had said. so we were talking about, what are you worried about when you come? What are some things that you want the children to do? What are their interests? Soccer is a big deal for this family, and all 3 kids are playing soccer. They're playing baseball. They're doing phenomenally. We talked about our hobbies and our interests. Olena is an amazing artist, and so that is obviously a big important part of her life. And so, getting her connected to some art community, that kind of thing, was things that we talked about. We talked about possible job opportunities and how we could get them connected, and all of those conversations happened before they came. And so I had reached out to the community by a Facebook post. We need help, we need some beds, we have a family of 5 coming, and within seconds of that post, we had the home furnished, like the bedroom was furnished. People were just so generous. So, and I know a lot of you here have donated to us and our guests, and it's been phenomenal. And so that's how the process started for us. And then once I kind of put that Facebook post out, that's when Hugs kind of approached and said, hey, like, we're trying to help out. And so Hugs has been fantastic with helping us out with funds for groceries, with transportation supports. I said to you, soccer is really important, so we have soccer games in Brockville and Kingston and Peterborough and Trenton and Belleville, like everywhere. And so that's been a huge help with all of the volunteer drivers, helping us out in getting 3 kids to 3 different spots every night of the week, that kind of thing. I also wanted to share with you too that when we were going to the airport to pick the family up, I was really nervous because I thought, oh my goodness, we can't get 5 people in one of our vehicles, so we had to take 2 vehicles. And I thought, oh my goodness, they're going to arrive in a strange country, and we're going to have to separate them. And we're going to have an hour-and-a-half drive home. And I was really worried for the family about that, because they could have, what were they thinking about as they separated? But when we got there, my husband drives a pickup truck, and the boys come out of the airport and they see the truck and they literally wanted to jump right in. They didn't care that they were being separated at all. They just wanted to ride in the truck. So that part we were nervous about was absolutely nothing to worry about. When the first few days after they arrived, it was, we thought that they would need time to kind of decompress and maybe, just kind of settle in and spend some quiet time together and that kind of thing. That was not the case at all. They had the time when they were in Warsaw where they wanted to get up and get running now. Like, the time was of the essence in their, in their eyes. So they arrived on the Saturday night. We got home about 1:30 in the morning on the Sunday morning. And so Sunday we spent the day just kind of showing them around the house, getting them kind of pointed to where things were. The community had donated bicycles for the kids. So they were so excited about the bicycles, and we were so worried we don't have helmets. So we jumped in the car, we took everybody to Walmart, and we got helmets so the kids could go bike riding that day. So that was awesome. And they were just so impressed with the toys that were donated for them. And there were books and puzzles and games and all sorts of things that were just ready and waiting for them when they arrived, as well as some clean clothes and all of that kind of stuff. So, and again, that was from the Brighton community that donated all of those things. But the first few days we did things like we went and applied for our OHIP cards, social insurance numbers. The second day was bank accounts and cell phones and school registration. Then driver's license, so going and doing the written and the vision test for the driver's license was that week as well. All the registration for the sports, because that was such a key component for the family as well. And then the booking of the immigration medicals, which was a cost, again, that Hugs has graciously donated to the family as well. So that was some really awesome things. The family has actually been here 2 months today. So they came May 7th, we're at July 7th. And we continue to kind of work through things and get settled in. Dad has got a full-time job. He just started this week, or last week? This week. Last week, yeah. Last week. And Mom is working part-time, but continues to look for other work. Again, I can't stress enough the community support that has been phenomenal. We open our door and Winnie, bless your soul, I can't see you, there you are. There's always some sort of baked good, at least once or twice a week, sitting on my front porch for the family, and or just things that other people feel that they might need, they're left on our front porch and so forth. And The family is very grateful, as well as my husband and I, of all of the things. I also want to mention Brighton Soccer Club donated the registration and equipment for the family. Brighton Baseball has donated. The Trenton YMCA, the Brighton YMCA, for summer camps. The Trenton YMCA donated 6 months of a family membership. The Brighton Quilting Guild made beautiful quilts for all of the members of the family. They were sitting on their beds when they arrived, and it was so overwhelming for them because there was a little heart is embroidered inside of each of the quilts, and there was a very beautiful welcoming card for them and things like that. So thank you to everybody who has donated to this family. It's been phenomenal.
You did it!
I did it! Public speaking should not be part
Man,
of
that
it.
was fast. All right, I speak way slower than Stacey does. Some of you may know me from having supported Syrian refugee families in our community, and that opened my eyes to the generosity that exists in Brighton as a community. It's really quite phenomenal what people do and what they step up to do to help other people in need. It's really an amazing community for that. So I echo what Stacey says about people's generosity and the speed with which we came together as a community in a relatively short time to support people like Stacey and myself, and now Bev and her husband, who are hosts to a family as well from Ukraine. That generous spirit, I think, is something that sometimes people take for granted, but we all should applaud ourselves for rising to a challenge that this whole invasion in Ukraine has presented the world. Our story as hosts is somewhat similar to Stacey's. We started at pretty much the same time as Stacey, unbeknownst to each other that we were doing this. I also registered with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. I registered with the Newcomers Center in Peterborough, who were very specific in what they were asking for people to be hosts, and waited for a week and got no response from either place. So then began to register on the same social media site that Stacey mentioned, as well as a number of others that we were available to host. The communication app that most people in Europe use is WhatsApp. There are very few people in Europe who actually are on Facebook. So WhatsApp becomes the way that people communicate with people around the world. And within, I guess, a week of having registered, we also started getting requests from people, some of which were obviously not needy refugee claimant requests. Some were people who were already elsewhere in the world and trying to figure out a way to get to Canada. So we had decided that we would really just focus on people who were in desperate need. And the couple that we ended up hosting were from Mariupol, and he worked in the Azovstal plant, which you may know in the news was the site of most of the bombing in Mariupol, and where the Ukrainian forces stayed for a long, long time before they were overcome and surrendered there. So the route that the couple we supported took was the fastest route out of Ukraine from Mariupol. So if you know your geography, it's on the Azovstal Sea, and it's at the eastern part of Ukraine, very close to the Russian border. So they took their car, their cat, their passports, and a bag, and they traveled through Russia, sold their car, and went to Georgia, because Georgia would be the next country that they could access that wasn't Russian. And that's where they stayed for 2 months in an NGO-run hostel. That's where we made contact with them, where we had similar kinds of discussions as Stacey has had. We did a tour of our house. We also sent them the link to Brighton and showed them flag that was flying at the municipal office, and basically decided that, you know, those would be the people that we would help. And this couple literally had nothing. They needed to have their flights paid for. They had a cat that they had left with that needed to be paid for. And they eventually got to Canada on the May long weekend, so not too much longer after the first family arrived here. So Dennis and Maria is the name of the couple that are with us, and within a couple of weeks of them arriving here, friends of ours on the point in Presqu'île knew the park manager at Presqu'île, and they both got jobs there on the grounds crew for the summer. So they've been employed pretty quickly since arriving. It's been a great experience for them so far because they've had to learn English. They've had to speak English, I should say, with their colleagues that they're working with. They bike to work every day, and if anybody knows where the Brighton Crammy boundary road is between Highway 2 and Little Lake, you know there's a big hill to go up when you come up from Highway 2. So they have to do that at the end of the day, but they're walking their bikes up to get home to our place. So like Stacey, we did all the social insurance, the OHIP, the bank accounts, the cell phones. They have a job. And we are working with them now on what their next step will be, because this seasonal work is going to end at the end of August, and they will need to figure out something for themselves after that time. So I think from the point of view of hosts, I would say that help with jobs and help with housing, ultimately, will be the big issues that we will need help with as hosts, and our Ukrainian guests will need help with as people who need to, you know, figure out where they're going to live once they leave both of Stacey's family, our family, Bev's family, and anybody else who's going to be hosting in Brighton. It will be temporary for all of us, and the temporary nature of it will change depending on the needs of each family that we are hosting. So that's my plea to the community right now, is keep eyes open for potential housing, keep eyes open for potential jobs, but then also as hosts we have to realize that perhaps this isn't where families will ultimately stay. They may go elsewhere. They may go to where there is a job that appeals to their skill set and isn't in our community. So we need to, I think, as hosts, help them get to that point where they're ready to make that transition if Brighton isn't ultimately where they stay.
So as I mentioned, Hugs is, we try to surround people with the support that they need, and I know that some people have made a commitment. They're gonna host a family, and they're already prepared to help financially with the families, and that's great. Hugs can help in other ways with drives, and so we have this equitable understanding of what kind of support we will give. It's all based on the specific need for the specific families. But I guess the big thing is that you're not alone. We'll partner with you. We have this amazing fundraising group that is just so active in making sure that we can live up to what we would like to be able to do. And the answer, the gentleman's not here, but the answer is, as far as I know, in Brighton there are now 3 families, but it's quite possible there are more who just aren't connected with Hugs. So there's 3 families in Brighton, but Hugs is also connected with a family in Castleton, mainly with driving, and then also a family in Frankfurt. So there's a little community starting to grow, and I know there's a couple of more. We're hoping a couple of more families will come at the end of the summer. So do you have any questions for our 2 lovely hosts? Okay.
I'm curious about how you discuss the duration of the arrangement, you know, whether it's a month, a year, forever. Because that's a touchy subject, so I'm just curious.
I can answer that. I think each person, each family in Brighton that agrees that they would like to host needs to decide that for themselves ahead of time. You need to be very clear about how long you feel you can open your home, how much you feel you can do actively as a host, how much you want to encourage self-sufficiency, all of that kind of stuff. You need to decide for yourself, and I think it will be different for all of us. At our house, we have an artificial timeline right now just because of the seasonal nature of the work that they're currently doing, which they were so lucky to get, you know, within 2 weeks of arriving, that they had a job. But it's not something that is sustainable for them. It's minimum wage, and I don't see them, you know, continuing in this particular role. I think it met a need for them immediately. And I can't speak for Stacey, but the situation is very different in her home because there are also children, and you know, like it will be different for every host and every guest that you host.
I think for us, it's been about, you know, having conversation as we go along around what's the next step. And, you know, jobs were our next step. And we're continuing to, you know, Alina's still looking for additional work. She's currently working at Sobeys. It's not what her, you know, choice of job is. She's a graphic designer and an artist, and that is certainly her passion, and that's what we're going to try and help her continue to find work in that area. And once that happens, then we can maybe have conversation around what's the next step.
Yeah.
And eventually the next step will be to move out and find a place to live. And, you know, at this point, they're still thinking Brighton community is where they would like to stay based, but who knows what the future holds, right? And it's just ongoing conversation on this.
And maybe you can speak to the sheet that the hosting committee prepared on conversations to have ahead of time before a family even comes. You guys had a whole...
Thank you for jogging my memory. I meant to say that. The hosting committee has developed a number of tools that are both in, well, we borrowed one actually that was in Russian, Ukrainian, and English, which was really helpful for having the dialogue together before you actually have someone in your home. You can, if you are contacted by a person from Ukraine who wishes to be hosted, you can forward them the document actually in Ukrainian or Russian. Russian, surprisingly, is a language of choice for many Ukrainians, just to be aware that it isn't only Ukrainian that's spoken. And we have something called a template of trust, which is also a number of questions that you consider ahead of time as a host and then have to ask the people that you are considering hosting. It's quite fair to ask for proof of what they look like, proof of what they have submitted as an application process to come to Canada, which goes through a biometric screening with various locations in Europe that they would send their passport to get the special visa. It's important to know that these are not refugees in Canadian terminology. They are displaced citizens. And so the rules around how Ukrainians come to Canada are different from how the rules apply to Syrian refugees, for instance. So somebody mentioned earlier about support from the federal government. There is direct support from the federal government for each adult who comes to Canada in a one-time payment of $3,000 and not equal, but another amount for children, 50, I think, right? So the federal government is paying the Ukrainian people who come here this one-time fee to help them get set up, to help them with initial expenses, to help them maybe with first and last month's rent. I mean, however the Ukrainian individuals want to use that money, there's no strings attached to it from Canada. but it will only be that. Does that answer your question?
And some. Thank you. And I just wanted to, my little bird just whispered in my ear that all of these documents will be posted on our Facebook group. So you can go and have a look later and at your own pace, read through them and see how you feel about them. Are there any other questions? Up the front, you're gonna make me walk.
I did just want to answer one of the questions previously too around counseling support for people. There is locally, the Quinte Immigration Services is doing counseling. They also have just some written documentation on, adjusting to life in Canada after, fleeing, and there's some written documentation available as well. And so the family has accessed those services, so it's been wonderful as well.
I'm just wondering how easy it was to communicate with the people that you were talking to on WhatsApp. Did they have command of the English language? Did you have ways of translating what was needed?
So in our situation, when we did our first Zoom chat, they had both their phones and a tablet. And there was a lot of smiling and laughing because they finally got to see what we looked like, and same for us, right? And my husband and I have hosted language students for years in our home from all over the world, and it doesn't really faze us that we can't communicate in somebody's language too easily. So translation apps are excellent. They were using them, we were using them, and we continue to use them. But we also really, really reinforce them trying as much as possible to speak and to figure out the words and to, have a conversation together. And it's a slow process, but it's coming. But yeah, one individual didn't have English at all in our case.
And in our case, Costa and Olina both speak English. The oldest son, Svet, he also speaks English and understands a fair bit. And then the two younger children don't, but are sponges right now and are learning quite quickly. And, we'll be pointing at things, what's this? And they'll tell us, and if they're right or wrong, we'll let them know. And then they correct us all the time, too. We use broken English a lot. So it's interesting. Yeah, it's been lots of fun.
And we should mention as well that Hugs has 3 now English as a second language teachers.
Yes.
Who are meeting, they're working 5 days a week.
Yep.
With the families, volunteering.
Yep. Our family goes, 2 people go every day, 5 days a week. Plus the kids are in summer school doing literacy programs for 3 weeks, which was kind of a mistake on my part because I said to Andre, the last day of school, I'm like, school's done for the summer. And I was like, oh, well, until Monday. Did you go back to summer school? It was cute.
I thought I saw a hand over here somewhere. I just didn't see who it belonged to. Oh, okay. Wonderful. There's a hand over here. Yay.
Thank you. I just have a question regarding any communication with other communities. So I know Port Hope has a number of. Are you in touch?
So I've been in touch, but the family hasn't been in touch yet. And I mean, it's just been so busy. I think it's been the biggest thing that it's been so hard. And we've had the school one of the teachers at the school is hosting a family, and she's reached out to say, would you like to connect and stuff? And it just hasn't happened yet, but we are hoping throughout the summer that we will be able to help.
Even within our group in Brighton, we haven't yet really.
No.
It's for the same reason. Everybody's very busy. Yeah.
Yes.
Just if anybody is considering being a host, I think Stacey and I would be more than happy to have you talk to us and share whatever concerns you might have about the process, and just know that it's got to be an individual decision for everyone about what you're comfortable with.
You mentioned that among the things that were applied for were OHIP cards. Mm-hmm. I know if somebody comes into the province, from elsewhere in Canada or elsewhere generally, there's some sort of a waiting period. Is there an exception for these people?
There's no waiting period.
So they have OHIP coverage, but good luck trying to get a doctor anywhere.
Well, I don't have a doctor here either, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's an issue for sure.
And our family has accessed medical services since being here.
So is ours.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right.
So are there any particular immediate needs for the family aside from where they're going to live and can they get a long-term job? Any other particular immediate needs?
Well, cars, sure. Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah.
For sure, in Stacey's family's case, that's an absolute must right now.
They're just in the process of purchasing a vehicle,
good.
a used vehicle.
Good.
So, yeah. And then again, through, community member that's been able to help them access a very reasonably priced vehicle, so.
That's right.
Yep, so Costa did just write did his road test last week and passed, so. But I was calling around for insurance quotes today for him, and anyone who, even though he's had 20 years driving experience, he's a new driver. There's just not that relationship between Canada and the Ukraine where there are with some other countries where your, experience from home is
Counts.
used here, but it's not. So, his insurance is very expensive.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thank you. So if there aren't any more, we're going to be here for a while, and I'm going to come up. And I don't have my notes with me, so Chris is going to holler if I forget anything I'm supposed to say. But thank you, first of all, both of you, for what you're doing, and also for speaking and sharing your experiences with us here tonight. It's an appreciation. Yeah.
Piece of cake, Stacey.
I think Stacey will sleep better tonight. So we have one of the ways that our amazing fundraising group is helping to support the work here is there are various projects on the go. So if you come out into the hall, there's a big basket from the shoe store that you can buy a ticket for $10. There are 5 silent auction items, and that silent auction is going to close soon. I think it was on beforehand. And then there's the ongoing silent auction of the planters, and you might have seen in the newspapers the planters that were, there's 9 of them, I believe, is it 9? Who were decorated or painted by various artists in the community, including Alina, who is from Ukraine. So go and have a look, and some of them are by teenagers, and they're just the coolest thing. And I can't afford them. Which is a good thing. Somebody can, and thank you. I think, Chris, are you in the room? Because I'd like to ask Chris to come up now. And there you are. There you are. Yes, well, you're in a bit of a shadow there, too. So.
Thank you. Don't go too far, ladies, please. Yep. May, we need you. And Maria and Yvonne, can you just come up, please? Just on behalf of the Hugs Committee, it's just a very small thank you, but the information that was shared tonight by all of you was amazing. I'm one of those people that's lined up to be a host in the next couple of months, and the sharing of information and learning what the people that are fleeing the Ukraine are dealing with makes it feel just all that much more important. And this is just a token of appreciation from the Hugs Committee. So, May, you're welcome. And Stacey, thank you. And Maria, there you go. And Yvonne. You're very welcome. And in the spirit of this is just a small aside, and I love it. In the spirit of what the Hugs Committee is all about, which is having 100% of the funds raised go right to support the Ukrainians, I was coached very closely by others on the Hugs Committee not to spend very much money on the little thank yous.
Thank you. I'm sure they're just charming. Thank you. And we have our own fundraising team that's very busy, but there's other people in the community who have been randomly raising money for Hugs, and thank you. I would like to ask Kim Carr to come up, and I'm not sure who's receiving this on behalf of Hugs. Is it Sharon? Yes, it is. Okay.
I would like to ask both Kim and Wendy, her mom, I'm sorry we're losing our light in here because I really want you to see these Colburn Lions Club vests. The Colburn Lions Club has been amazingly generous already. Sure. Oh, there's, right, I guess. I haven't been there. Want to see that? Okay. They have, this group in Colburn, the Colburn Lions Club, have already donated twice to Hugs. And I just wanted to give just a moment of context to the presentation tonight because I think they really do deserve recognition for money that they have given a couple of weeks ago. And I'd just like more people to know about that. They organized, and some of you will know this, a huge fundraiser on May 7th in the Keeler Center, and were able to raise over $10,000. And they, yeah. And actually, I have the breakdown. Kim gave me the breakdown here a few moments ago. So that money went to $2,500 to the International Red Cross in Switzerland, and that was matched by Nestle. And then the Lions Club International Foundation in Poland, because they're very active on the ground there already, as we've heard tonight. And then $2,000 to Northumberland Ukrainian families, which we've all read about in the news. And then $2,000 to Hugs. And they presented that check. Marie Lackner is also a Colburn Lion member. And she presented that check at our first fundraiser when we kicked off the Painted Planters event. And so we received a check that day, but not very many people knew about that. So now you do. And so then indirectly tonight, we want to thank these folks because the Old Church Theater in north of Trenton on Bonestill Road, you may know about that, they heard about the great fundraiser that the Lions Club organized in Colburn, and they reached out to someone they knew, Marie Lackner, who is a lion. Trying to do this clearly for you. It's a bit convoluted. So they reached out to Lion Marie to see if she would just help them raise some money at one of their open mics. And that happened last Wednesday night. And basically, they put a donation jar out for when people arrived on their patio. And at the end of the evening, Marie called me. They had all counted it. And in that donation jar, in cash, was $1,034. So, yeah. So it was wonderful. And Marie didn't feel comfortable handling that money herself and just sort of, she wanted to run it through an organization. So she asked for permission to direct it through the Colburn Lions Club, of which she is a member, and wasn't able to come herself tonight to make the presentation, but has asked her fellow Lions to do that in her place. So that's why we're here. Oh, I better get rid of my cheat sheet. Hold on. She wants a picture. Marie wants a picture. Did you get it? Great. Thank you so much. So very much. Sorry that was so long. I just felt it was important to get some background on that.
Thank you. And that wasn't long, and that does conclude our program for this evening, though, but you are welcome to come into the hall. The air conditioning is on in the hall, and there's bright lights in the hall. And please come and hear more about what Hugs is doing. There's lots of sign-up sheets. If you think you can give even an hour a month, we will take your help. So please come and talk to us and find out more about what we're doing. But thank you to everybody. Thank you to Dr. Maria. Thank you to Yvonne, and to Stacey and May as well for everything. And thank you all for coming. Take care.